The SEC is the best conference in college football because this conference has the most quality teams from top to bottom that can make it to the college football playoffs. Realistically, you can make the argument for 9 teams in the SEC that can be a possible participant in the CFP this year. But the issue with the SEC is that you have a few teams that get judged based off recency bias. What they've done in the last season or so gets into the way of people being able to properly evaluate what certain teams are going to be this season. They judge teams based off the success they had previously, and certain teams, like the ones that we're going to be going over on this list, are getting overhyped because what they've been and what they've done in the past. And no team better embodies that than Tennessee. Tennessee isn't even a top 25 team, in my opinion. They just lose too much to be as good as what they were last season. You lose a really good pass rusher in James Pierce. Your best corner, Jamal McCoy, who was an All-American. We don't even know when he's going to be healthy enough to play this season. You already are thin at the cornerback position as what it is without him. Then on offense, you got to replace 3 of your top receivers from last year. You replace 4 starters on the offensive line. Then you also lose the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in Dylan Sampson. So there's a lot of new faces that Tennessee is going to have on both sides of the football this year. Their defense should still be really good, but I don't know if their offense is going to be as effective running the football as what they were last year. You had a really good offensive line in terms of being able to open up holes on the ground. Your receiving core is unproven. Not a lot of production there. We don't know if your receiving core is going to be as good as what you had last year, or if you're going to have a receiving core that struggles with drops, that struggles to get open. I'm not really too concerned about them losing Nico because, to be quite frank with you, he wasn't that good in my opinion anyway. I feel Joey Aguilar will be an upgrade over Nico, but they just have a lot that they have to replace. I don't think that they've recruited at a high enough level to just be one of those programs that doesn't have to rebuild. They just reload. I think this is a rebuilding season for Tennessee this year. Ole Miss has won 10 games, three out of the last 4 years under Lane Kiffin. And last season, they went all in on trying to make it to the playoffs last year with the stout transfer portal class that they were able to acquire. Unfortunately, they came short of the expectations that they had. Then you got to reload all over again. Now, they once again bring in a pretty impressive transfer portal class, but when you live by the portal, you die by the portal, and I don't think that their portal class is going to have the same impact as what last year's portal class had on this team. Plus, you have questions on the offensive line, which Jackson Dart was able to overcome some of the inconsistent offensive line play because of his mobility. Now, losing Jackson Dart shouldn't be too big of an issue because you're replacing him with Austin Simmons, who was a blue chipper coming out of high school, one of the best quarterbacks in his high school class. But when you have a young quarterback that's inexperienced behind the offensive line that hasn't really been that good, there's going to be some issues. There's going to be some growing pains, especially with the schedule that Ole Miss has to play. When you got to play Georgia once again, you bullied them last year. You're going to be able to do the same this year. You don't have the same talent on the defensive line this year as what you had last year also. Then Pete Golden, I feel he was carried by the talent that Ole Miss had on that defense last year. I still am not really a huge believer in him. So I think that Ole Miss crashes back down to earth. I think they probably are like anywhere between a 6 to 8 win team this year. I wouldn't be surprised if we see them drop under 500. They just have a lot of replacements that they have to get some good play out of to be as good as what they were last year, and I just don't see that happening. Missouri, may be the most overrated team, not just in the SEC, but in college football in general. They're the definition of living off the past. The past 2 seasons, they've had consecutive 10-win seasons. Eli Drinkwitz has proven to be one of the better coaches in college football. The issue with Missouri is, like Ole Miss, they're very dependent on the transfer portal due to them not being able to recruit at a high enough level to simply just reload every year. So they're going to have a down season or two occasionally, especially with them having one of the most murkiest quarterback situations in the SEC. The majority of the teams in the SEC this year already have proven quarterback play, or at least quarterback play that, even despite having a guy that doesn't have a bunch of experience, you still have confidence in them because of the pedigree. Well, we don't know who's going to be starting for them this year. It's supposed to be Drew Perbula, who was the backup quarterback for Penn State, but we don't know too much about him. We don't know how good, if he's good at all. So for Missouri, the quarterback situation is a question. How good are you going to be at receiver, replacing Luther Burden? How good is that offensive line going to be? You also struggled against the best teams on your schedule last season. So with the struggles that Missouri had against the good teams that they did play, which they've been able to take advantage of having a weak schedule from an SEC standpoint, avoiding some of the top teams in the conference like Georgia, I just see Missouri coming back down to being a 6-7 win team. Maybe they can rattle off a few upsets and get the 8 or 9, but I'll be shocked if they get the 10 wins this year. Texas A&M. Texas A&M, I don't think is overhyped for them not having the talent, because they do have the talent. And I don't necessarily feel like they're overhyped because they don't have the ability to win the SEC, because they definitely can. I believe in Mike Elko. I just feel that it's a year too early for Texas A&M. For some reason, I feel like Texas A&M has another 7-5 or 8-4 in them this season. And then in Mike Elko's third season next year, 2026, I think that's when we see the Aggies finally make that run. Now, they did make some really good portal additions. You get Concepcion, one of the best receivers out of the transfer portal from this past portal cycle. There's a lot to be hyped up about when it comes to him. This dude is an electric player. You got Marcel Reed, who looked really impressive, taking over in place of Connor Wigman. But he did look really shaky near the last stretch of the season. He didn't play with the same level of consistency as what he did early during the season. Maybe that was because defensive coordinators started to figure out this offense. Maybe it's because they started to understand Marcel Reed's tendencies a lot more. The defense also is a concern. How good is that secondary going to be? They also lose a lot of talent up front. So Texas A&M, the talent's there, but it's the consistency from Marcel Reed going to be there. It's the consistency out of the passing game going to be there. And is that secondary going to improve? So these are the most overhyped teams in the SEC entering this upcoming college football season. Let me know what teams you have on your list. Do you agree with this one? Let me know down in the comment section below.